So let me give you just an overview tonight. Some of you may be sort of thinking with disbelief, how could it possibly be the case that we've arrived at this point in my child's life that we're planning for their future beyond their high school years? And you may have been thinking about this time for quite a while, but to think that it's actually arrived, it's just a different kind of experience. It can prompt reflection, but here we are, and our aim in all of our efforts in working with you and your children through this process is to simplify the complex and to give you the support that you need in order to confidently travel through what can be a stressful time. It's amazing to think that we are in your children's third year of their high school careers, and all 3 years have been impacted by the effects of COVID and the disruption to in-person learning for a period of time, and just all that we've gone through. And to think, how could it possibly be that we're planning for this next step? The reason I bring that up is not just that it's been our shared reality, but that one of the real lessons of the past 2 years almost at this point have been about managing expectations and being able to develop resilience and to lean into coping skills to get through a difficult time. And well, in no way is the post-secondary planning process does it have the gravity of living through the pandemic like we are at present. The experiences that we've had can give us something to lean on and some wisdom as to how we can manage the emotions of this experience. You're going to hear a little bit more about just sort of where do we start, how do we approach this process sort of philosophically and developmentally in just a little while. But before I go any further, I'm going to turn things over to Kathy Sabat, who is going to talk to you a little bit more about what to expect from the rest of this evening.
Thank you, Dan, and welcome everybody. I'm Kathy Sabat. I am the College and Career Counselor at Newton South. This is my 8th year in that role. So just to kind of get started with the presentation, we are all the counselors, members of the department are going to take a role in tonight's presentation. So I'd like to give each of them credit at the beginning here. So we're going to have Sue Battler from Goldrick House, Christina Brown from Goldrick, Hai-Kyung Choi from Wheeler House, Chris Hardiman from Goldrick, Ariel Kenyon from Cutler, David Kershaw from Goodwin House, Aaron Lewis from Wheeler House, Shira Limmer from Wheeler House, James Medeiros from Cutler House, Nicole Motley from Goldrick House, Dan Rubin from, I don't know, just the school, the whole school, nothing but the school. Myself, Donna Siegel is on leave at the moment, and we're very fortunate to have Alicia Parker with us in the role as counselor at Cutler House. Sarah Stile is in Goodwin House, and then we have Kara Veely in Goodwin House as well. So we have a great staff, veteran staff, capable and willing and ready to help your students figure out what that next step is. So with that, I think we'll just get started. I'm going to pass that over to Ms. Veely.
Hi, everyone. So I want to, oh, am I showing up? Okay. Yes. I want to emphasize that we support students no matter what their plan is. And what I mean by that is for some students, four-year college is the way to go for a majority of our students at Newton South, but we have a good number of other students who go other directions right after high school as well. Two-year colleges, gap years, working, vocational, technical school, like a Job Corps, military, specialized post, sometimes a post year at a private school before they go to college. There are just so many options out there. And so we always try to be really mindful that not every kid's path is the same. So know that no matter what the path of your child is, we will support that. And most likely we have experience working with kids who took a similar path in the past. So we're all inclusive. I just wanted to make sure you know that we're here for everyone. So next slide. So tonight, this is going to be an overview. We're going to focus on the 4-year college process for the most part, just because usually that's what people are hoping to hear from this seminar. So a breakdown of tonight's agenda, we're going to talk about monthly webinars that we'll be offering to you, the parts, the components of a college application process, resources available to you, the timeline of junior year, and within the college application process, the student, us as counselors and staff at South, you, the parent, whose role is what, who's responsible for which part of the process. So next slide. So, and just to be more clear about when I said webinars, so as I said, tonight is an overview. We're giving you an overview of the process, but we've already, narrowed down some more specific topics to address in future months. So in February, we'd like to focus a little more on standardized testing. March, college admissions and students with disabilities. April, college panel. May, college personal statement and essays. And June, summer planning. So to get more information about these more specific topics that we'll be, helping to educate you all about and work with you on, the place to look is the College and Career Center website, which you can find under the counseling tab on the Newton South High School website. So know that will be updated throughout the year with specifics. And these are education opportunities for you and your student. We want to, drill down into any topics that you would really find helpful. So that's it for me.
Thanks, Ms. Veely. So, where do we begin with all of this? For me, oftentimes I come back to a 3-letter word, fit. When we're figuring out what the right option, opportunity, next step is for any student, really it comes down to fit. And when I think about fit, the metaphor that comes to mind for me is actually the visual of a jigsaw puzzle, and recognizing that there are many possible matches, but to find a match that's really going to work, we've got to know what we're looking for. And to know what we're looking for, we need to know sort of where we are and who we are. So there's a number of questions that we encourage students to think about as they plan for their post-secondary options. And whether this is a college option that they're considering or they're considering alternatives to college, we want students to think about the why. Why do they want to follow the path that they're planning for? Is it based on what is important to them and what brings joy and fulfillment to them? So are their goals and values aligned with the choices that they're considering? What do they want out of their college experience? Why might they want to go to college or not want to go to college? If they're planning on joining the military or the workforce, what is it that speaks to them that aligns with what they're looking for in their lives? We're really, again, talking about trying to help young people find a sense of purpose and figuring out how to navigate really uncertain times. For your kids, there's really been very little question in their lives of what comes next. What comes next year? You finish first grade, you go to second grade. You finish middle school, you may entertain going to a private high school, you may entertain going to your local public high school, but you're going to high school. This is a much bigger, much more open-ended question and choice than most of your children have ever really encountered in their lives. It wouldn't be unusual to observe them, expressing some ambivalence. And sometimes rather than focusing on, well, let's develop a college list, the best starting point is just to have a conversation with your child about what they want, why they want it for themselves, and really empowering them to think about what will bring meaning to their lives. There are some questions that you might want to think about or ask yourself as parents as well and guardians. And some of those questions to consider are just around, are your goals and hopes aligned with what your children want for themselves? One thing that we all encounter, when I say we all, the school counselors, is we have conversations, really powerful conversations with families that oftentimes expose that what students are thinking about for themselves might actually diverge from what their parents have wanted for them. And it sometimes can feel a little bit stressful, a lot stressful, maybe even downright fraught with anxiety to have that conversation. Those are some of the things that we as counselors can help facilitate, help bring your student's voice to the surface. As a parent, it's very important to anticipate what are some of the emotional tripwires that might make this process more stressful as you navigate this time with your kids. And overall, this is a fun time. You can step back a little bit, watch your children blossom in their independence, again, finding their sense of purpose and really sort of figuring out who they are as they embrace their emerging independence. We want to work with you and help you to make this a fun time of self-discovery where you can really be proud of your kids' growth over the course of their time. If you do find yourself feeling stressed out, maybe things are not moving along at the pace that you would have hoped, we take the airline metaphor, put on your oxygen mask first, sort of take that step back, do a little bit of reflection, think about, what is it that's causing me to either feel frustrated or feel like things aren't going well. Pick up the phone, call your child's counselor. We're happy to have a conversation with you, strategize. But as you're going to hear in a little bit, it's really important through this process that we allow your sons, daughters, children to set the pace and to really take a lead in this process. I'm going to turn it over to our next steps. We'll come back to some developmental themes in a bit. This can, I promise you, be a really fun and rewarding, fulfilling process. So we look forward to joining with you in that process. And
hi, everyone. Chris Hardiman, Goldrick House. I'm just going to talk a little bit about college application components. Next slide, please. So as Dan said, this is the process that we don't want students to, if they are planning to apply to college, that they feel like they have to dive in anytime soon. It's something to kind of slowly roll out. But we wanted to talk about something that's been around for a while now. The Common Application is a system that many colleges, I think it's close to 800 colleges in the US and abroad, that use this system as a means to simplify the process for students. And on the Common Application, students are actually able to set up their account in the spring, but a lot of, we recommend students to use the summer and then into the fall to primarily do a lot of the work on the system. But the main components of the Common Application are the personal information, that's demographics, et cetera. That's the easy stuff for students to enter. They're going to enter a piece on their education history. They're going to be able to self-report testing scores if it's a school that requires them. Some colleges don't. We'll talk about that more later. There's also a portion of the Common App where students can enter all of their extracurricular activities in school, out of school, during high school. And then there's a place where students will self-report their courses and grades. And we will go through all this process with the students in our seminars. And again, throughout the spring if students get confused or if it's overwhelming for them. The college-specific questions and essays will be available. They're always available on August 1st. So even if, I believe last year the Common App came out with their personal statements. They came out, I think, in February with those, but some of the colleges, many of them have their own specific questions or supplemental essays. And just to be aware, those won't be available till August 1st of this year. There are additional applications that are used by some schools that don't use Common Application. Some of them are the Coalition. Some of the colleges like the California schools, UCal schools, and Texas schools have their own process, their own application system, and that can all be determined and figured out pretty easily on school-specific websites, which are pretty comprehensive these days. Just to say again, a comment on the personal statement and the supplemental essays. So a lot of students do focus on the main statement that will be sent to any college that uses Common App. And it is an important essay. Seniors, when juniors or seniors next year, the English teachers, no matter what English class students take, will assist students with giving them feedback for their personal essays. But it is a way for the admission counselors to gain insights into the applicant, because some of these colleges get thousands and thousands of applications, and the essay is one way for them to get to know a student as well as they can. There usually is a 650 word limit, and there usually are 7 prompts to choose, 6 specific prompts, and then 1 open-ended where students can choose their own. And those prompts, again, last year they came out in February, but we'll see if they come out, if they're not already out now, but they should be out soon. But the supplemental essays is the last thing I'll talk about. That's something that's occasionally overlooked by students because often they're short questions or short essay prompts, maybe 100 words, 150 words. So students sometimes get deceived and they think, oh, it's not a big deal, those essays, but they're actually very important. They matter a lot, as we say at the bottom of the slide there, because they are questions that differentiate from the main personal statement, and they get at things like, why are you applying to that specific college, or an interest or a specific major. So it is an important essay, and we will continue to kind of pound that into the students, not to take that essay lightly. Not every college or university has a supplemental essay, but it will be very clear on the Common Application which ones do require them. So that's a bit on the application process, and on to the next presenter.
Hi, I'm Christina Brown. I'm a counselor in the Goldrick House. I'm going to talk a little bit about transcript and GPA, and of course, if you have questions, we'll take those at the end. So the transcript that goes out to colleges is going to have the 9th, 10th, and 11th grade classes and final grades. And depending on when a student applies, it'll have those grades up to that point. The transcript is going to designate ACP, honors, and AP courses. So you'll see those written out with the name of the course. Unweighted GPA for each year is included. And it includes information about recent changes to the grading. Kind of in the last couple of years, it's been different because of COVID. One of them will actually refer back to our, now I'm forgetting the name of it, the high school profile, which you can take a look at on our website. For GPA, it's unweighted GPA is going to be listed on the transcript. An unweighted GPA means that no extra weight or consideration is given to honors or AP courses. So this is out of a 4.0 scale. Newton South GPA is calculated using the 10th and 11th grade years. So we don't calculate the 9th grade GPA. That being said, colleges are going to calculate the GPA the way that they want to calculate it, and that can be different depending on the school. And as I said, Newton South does not compute a cumulative GPA. So all of our GPA is unweighted and it won't be cumulative on your transcript. Just in case there's any frequently asked questions coming up later on, we'll talk a little bit about Naviance later, but we're not going to upload a single GPA into Naviance as we have. If you have older children who've graduated before and you've seen that, we won't be doing that because we're not doing the cumulative. And GPA will be available in Aspen after the transcripts are uploaded, maybe in a couple of weeks. Mr. Rubin will let students know when the term 2 grades have officially closed and the transcripts are in Aspen. They'll be in the Aspen documents folder, and you can see that there with 9th, 10th, and half of junior year grades. All right.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dave Kershaw. I am one of the counselors in Goodwin House. It's great to have you all with us. As Dan referenced, we know that it has been probably at many times a trying 3 years, and maybe a journey that hasn't looked the way you and your students had hoped because of all that we've gone through. But just the same, you have lovingly and expertly guided your children to this point, and it's an accomplishment to get here, and it's also a little bit of can be a stressful threshold, and that's one of the reasons we're here tonight, is to hopefully alleviate some of that stress. I know my role is to talk a little bit about testing, which can really get the stress levels going. We hope we can, again, demystify some of that. Dan, flip to the next slide if you could, please. So standardized testing, there's obviously several different options. Many of you have heard of these terms before, but obviously the SAT, which has always been the gold standard, has been around a long time. It's coming actually neck and neck with the ACT. The ACT has caught up, and both of those are, they're similar format. The ACT includes a science component. And the best way to really kind of put the two next to each other is probably to, there's a lot of different references online to look up or Google a side-by-side comparison between the two to really get an idea of what the small nuances and differences between the two of them are. There are some scoring differences between the two. If you guess on one, you get a certain amount of credit, if you know what I mean. So it's best to look at that side-by-side visually. But essentially, that's the main tests that are used most. Standardized testing to apply to colleges are the SAT and the ACT. The testing timeline around each of those is different for every individual student. It usually starts, the process of preparing starts sort of, the beginning, middle of junior year, and the testing, the first sitting will happen somewhere around the middle of junior year. And then generally, years ago, it used to be one sitting and one and done. These days, it tends to be inclusive of usually 2 sittings, sometimes as many as 3. We're not condoning any of those, any or all of those. That's just, again, it's an individual choice. So that's what that looks like as far as a timeline. Obviously, if you've watched the news, which I know many of you have, the climate around standardized testing has changed drastically with the onset of COVID and the inability to offer testing in the format that we've been used to, both for being in one room together with everybody else and things like that. So they've had to really change the landscape around how the tests are administered. And then as a result, the colleges and universities have had to pivot as to how they're weighing these tests. They're still very important, but it's, I think, nationally has really sparked a conversation around the value of the test and things like that. That's the topic for another day, but it's an important piece of your role in deciding how you're going to move forward in choosing, or your students' role in how they're going to move forward in choosing which test they're going to look at, if any, because we'll talk about it a little bit later, but there's a test optional piece that has really gotten much more popular. The TOEFL is the test of English as a foreign language. That is for students whose first language is not English. Some schools will require that in place of an SAT or ACT. Fee waivers or fee reduction vouchers are available for all the tests above. That's something we can help with. So if the students come to us, we can get them a fee waiver, or it would be basically a code, which will allow them to have the registration fee as they're signing up for these tests waived. So that's something they'll see us on an individual basis for. The ASVAB is the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. That's something that the Armed Services uses for their aptitude test. And that's something we'll work with, again, individually for students' interests. If they are interested in the military, that's something recruiters will also work with them on and give them some background on. And lastly is the test optional and test flexible schools. This has, it has been a small number, and it has increased exponentially with COVID. So I think checking individually the college and university websites of the as you start to build a list, looking at the individual schools and what their policies are, because they do differ pretty significantly. It's not just it's test optional or we accept tests. Some of them will be very clear and should be very clear on their website as to how they're weighing the tests, what it looks like if you could send and have a great score but decide not to send, like, when is it a good time to do that and not do that. There's a lot of information. Because it's a relatively new and changing policy, they've done a really great job of communicating that fairly well, and they're happy to answer questions around that if you have specific questions as to your students' needs. But that's something that is important to hone in on. It's ever changing, as we've seen. The numbers seem to be growing as to schools that are adopting these practices, but it just adds another layer. Nothing to stress over. I think the biggest thing with standardized testing, and I'll leave you with this, is to just be an informed consumer. Ask your counselor, ask kids who have done it in the past about how they've prepped, what they've done for prep. There's a ton of test option of low cost prep options out there that have bubbled up year over year. So a lot of online prep that kids can do individually at their own pace. So just really ask questions and be thoughtful in the preparation. So thank you all so much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Stile, counselor in Goodwin House. Thanks for being here. I get to speak to you about recommendations. We recommend that students ask 2 teachers to write a letter on their behalf, specifically to junior year teachers, ideally. And this is a conversation that I think all of us have with students pretty regularly who are in the process of deciding which teachers might be the best ones for them to approach with this request. And the timeline we recommend is between April and June, that students approach a teacher, ideally privately, to ask about whether or not they'd be comfortable writing a letter of recommendation to support their college process. And again, we can kind of walk through students how to do that. Some students, like everything, some students are very comfortable with that. Other students need a little bit more coaching. And so we're here for all of that. And when thinking about which teachers to select, we advise that, students think about who knows them, who knows their academic abilities and understands their growth the best. But again, we're available for those conversations with students. Occasionally, some colleges will want a specific subject area represented from a teacher letter of recommendation, especially if the student is planning and majoring in a particular field. So for example, the example on the slide is, an engineering program may require a science or math teacher to come in with the application. So that's just something to keep in mind for a specific case. And then lastly, the school counselor statement is something that students do not have to ask us for. We are, kind of ready to write for all of our students. It's just part of our process. And before we finalize our letters of recommendation, our counselor statements for students, we do require, we ask that students complete a senior info sheet. And we often will also ask parents and guardians to complete an information sheet. And this just gives us some great information to make sure that we are prioritizing in our letter, so that we make sure we cover all the bases and that we hear from the student about what they've been through in high school, what they want to make sure that we try to communicate in our letters that maybe isn't represented on their transcript, or in their essays or in their activity list on their Common App. So it's a nice opportunity actually for students to share some of, what they've been through, how they've grown, their reflections on their high school experience. And then oftentimes we'll kind of follow up with students as we're finishing our letters on some of the things that they share in those info sheets. So those 2 pieces are really, really helpful as we wrap up our statements for the college process. So I think that's it for me. But that's a nice component that students can kind of take care of prior to the summer. Usually, if they have those two teachers, they sometimes feel pretty good heading into the summer to know that piece is in place for them.
Hi, everybody. My name is Haekyung Choi, and I'm a counselor in Goldrick and Wheeler houses. And, I want to thank you all for being here. I did want to bring up some important items or issues to consider for juniors going into their senior year. One of the most important things that hopefully your students will talk to their counselors about our senior courses. So in a couple of months, probably early March or so, we'll be talking with students about their courses for next year. Some things to keep in mind are for students to sort of strike that balance between taking a rigorous course load and having time to focus on this college application process, as well as take care of their school work and extracurricular commitments as well. So we want to make sure that students are taking into consideration that senior year especially the first half of senior year, can be a really stressful time. And we want to make sure that they're taking that into consideration as they're choosing courses for next year. To reiterate some things that were already mentioned, I think research is really important, and to start the research process with self-exploration and then using some of the search tools that are available like Naviance, College Board, College Express, and other resources to find more information about all of the different options that are out there for students. It would be great. There are also virtual tours available, college fairs that students can take advantage of. And usually Ms. Sabet will have college reps who come and visit in the springtime also to meet with juniors so that they can find out more information about various schools. So hopefully they'll do some research and match their interests and their learning style with the colleges that are out there that sort of are good fits for them, and with the purpose of developing a list. The goal is to have a list of schools where some schools are a little bit more challenging or more selective to get into, and then some schools that are target schools where students sort of are good sort of fits for those schools, and then a couple of schools that are likely schools for students. So, at the end of junior year and into senior year, hopefully they will have a nice balanced list of schools, and it's all schools that have the qualities that students are looking for in their college or learning environment. There are some schools, very few, that might require an interview, and some schools may make it an optional sort of component of their application process. So students in their research process hopefully will find more information about that. And if they need help to prepare for interviews, they certainly can reach out to their counselors. We also would like families to talk about affordability a little bit there, and also that financial aid applications are available and there are lots of scholarship opportunities available, and that we know that the sticker price is not necessarily the cost of college, but to really talk a little bit about what is feasible and what are some constraints that might stand in the way, so that students are not going into the process not knowing some of those limitations or constraints. The last thing that I'll talk about are some special considerations. So students who may need some additional supports around their learning needs in colleges, they might want to look at some support services in college. Students who are looking to pursue majors in performing or visual arts, they may have portfolio requirements or other requirements that they also might have to look into. And if a student is looking to be recruited for sport, there might be some other sort of requirements that students have to take into consideration. And hopefully they'll reach out to their counselors and to Ms. Sabat, and we'll be able to help guide them in a way that is supportive and helpful. Thank you. That's it for me.
Okay, I think I'm next. Kathy Sabat, College and Career Counselor. I'm going to talk about resources, and I didn't mention it here, but obviously, like, one of the best resources that your child and you have is your school counselor. The counselors are available to answer questions. You know, there's really no bad question to ask when it comes to thinking about what a child's options are after high school, what that next step is. So first and foremost, you know, they're the expert in terms of just, you know, kind of going through that process developmentally with students and families. And my role in and being the college and career counselor is really to focus specifically on that post-secondary transition, and be able to provide resources and develop relationships with representatives at colleges, military personnel. I work with gap year organizations. I work with alternative paths, you know, such as the trades or more skill-driven technical training. So I get to focus, you know, specifically on that, but we all work collaboratively together. So some other resources I think that I could direct you to, and I should mention that the links here, just in the interest of time, we're not going to click the links, but the presentation, which is being recorded along with these PowerPoints and access to the links, is going to be posted on the first resource listed here, which is the College and Career Center website. Ms. Veely mentioned that it's very easy to access that. You can go to the high school, Newton South High School main webpage under the counseling tab, and you'll find College and Career Counseling, and you'll find the actual website. That website is, when COVID hit, it was pretty much like, it was in the works, but I quickly had to, you know, turn and get and that was my main source for, you know, giving out information related to, you know, college materials or jobs that were coming up, or virtual internships. So really kind of a range of information. So it's kind of morphed into, you know, a much more robust place where you can get links. The recordings of a lot of our seminars we've done are there, and it will be the place that you'll want to go to and direct your children to see some of our more topic specific monthly programming that we're going to have. So I'd recommend you taking a look at that. We also have a college planning guide, which is also accessible on the College and Career Center website. And that is a collaboration between Newton North and Newton South. Years and years ago, getting together and really kind of looking at primarily, again, the college process, but it takes many of the topics, most of the topics we have, you know, addressed so far here, but goes into much greater depth. So I think it's like 100 pages. And so there's a lot of, you know, robust information in there as well. That can be viewed as a PDF, or it can be printed, or you can just kind of read it. But there's a link on the College and Career Center Planning, College and Career Center website. Starting the first week in February, we will do individual meetings with counselors, students, and myself. So if that's something that you're interested in, you can contact your counselor, or you can contact me, and we'll try and get kind of a mutually, you know, satisfactory time that we can talk about your child's individual needs. Because at a certain point, it really does become, you know, we give you a lot of good information, and then it's kind of like, well, how does this play out for my child? And so we're able to do that. So we're happy to meet with you. As it was mentioned, we usually have college rep visits. I left the slide as saying virtual visits, but I am very hopeful that by spring, things will be anew and we will be able to have our representatives in to meet with students in person. So that's usually a very popular time for colleges, for those students who kind of already, are thinking they know why and what they're looking for, or just curious to kind of see like, what is college about, or what does this particular school have to offer? What are the majors that are available there? So it's good exposure. And then we do have a very, very busy fall typically, where we have, in any fall, typically we have 250 to 300 colleges from across the United States, regionally and internationally, come and meet. And again, I'm hopeful it'll be in person this fall. And then other resources, of course, we always refer students to the college websites for the most accurate, up-to-date information. Kids like Instagram, so that they have some pretty cool Instagram pictures. You can get a good sense of the vibe of campuses sometimes from those. There's a website called, or an organization called MIFA, which stands for the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority. Many people think of them or have had some familiarity with them as like the place to go if you want a student loan. That's sort of information about financial aid, which they have, but they also have some really nice college exploration features where you can kind of put in information and come up with a list. So if you haven't looked at MIFA, you should definitely take a look at that. And last but not least, Naviance is a tool that the kids are just sort of becoming familiar with. We lost a year in getting them on Naviance, typically giving them registration codes in sophomore year. But most juniors should have them by now. And that's a tool that is used for both, college, career exploration, self-assessment. So it can really meet students where they are. Some kids will go right to the college, search. Other kids are just not too sure. They just kind of want to take it a little slow. They might really engage in the self-discovery, self-assessment, personality tests, strengths, explore, inventories. And I think that's a great place to start for anybody, no matter where they are. So Naviance is only offered as student accounts. We don't have parents accounts, so you would have to get that login from your students in order to have access to it. So, all right, next slide. So just a little bit about the College and Career Center. It is in the cafeteria for the most part, and it's accessible for students in grades 9 through 12. So I am happy to have students come in. This picture here is when there were, those are great days when kids could come in. The irony of this picture, though, is that, everybody could be together, and it was our very first video presentation by a college. So it just seems like really very, very ironic that now, like, this is all we do. That's all we did in the fall, was have virtual college visits. But we kind of, have that particular picture here. So, it's nice to see the kids all together there, though. So it is available for students to come in for more events, like a college visit. There are resources there. In terms of books and directories of different information related to college or majors or gap year or careers, that sort of thing. So books still matter. Kids still like to go through the books every now and then. I also have many postings for scholarships, financial aid resources there. And handouts, anything from, how to start writing your college essay to interview questions, that sort of thing. So, so there's a lot of resources that way. I also have internship listings and jobs, which are slowly but surely starting to come back. So, so that's a really nice thing too, as well. So, I like it as a space when kids could, like they have a free block, or, I do run some WIN sessions for extra help. But, when the kids come in and they have a free block and they're doing their homework, or they just want to chat about their future. So those informal sort of like genuine conversations that we just start talking about, that transition are kind of my favorite times there. So anyway, that's my bit, and I'm going to pass it along next to Sue Battler.
Thanks, Kathy. And as Kathy said, I'm Sue Battler, guidance counselor in Goldrick House, and it's a pleasure to be with all of you tonight. By now, most of us have given the Naviance registration codes to your students. If they haven't gotten the code, they need to just stop in and see us. If they need to reset a password, we can help them with that. Lots of different things. This access page, you can enter it through student.naviance or through the College and Career website. They'll be using their username, not the school email password. And we encourage all of you to have a conversation with your children about setting up a college-specific email. And that would be as close to possible as their complete name, so that as information goes into a college, it matches their file. Still to this day, I'm getting names of students like Smiley Girl and Majestic Boy. So it's best to have susanbattler@gmail.com. They'll also be setting a password. It would be terrific if you could remind them to put in their phones their Naviance password, their Common App password, their My School Bucks password, so that they don't forget it when they come in to meet with us. Dan, can you go to the next one? Thanks. So this is just one of the many features of Naviance. And for those of you that have students who have already graduated from Newton South, you'll notice that it's different than what it used to look like. They change Naviance every year, but some of the same tools are there. This one is to help students match or come up with a list of schools. Right now, their list could be as big as 6,000 schools. And using this Super Match search program, we hope to help them get down to 100 and hopefully even 20 by the time they hit September. And it's going to ask them all the questions that everyone has been discussing. Do you want to be in a big city? Do you want to be in a rural campus? Do you want there to be grass, or can it be all cement? Do you want to be close to home or far away? Does it matter if there is a religious component? So there's lots of good questions. I like to tell students that they should do this many times and save it. One of the times should be when everything is great at home. They absolutely love you. They love your food. They love being in their house. And they'll find that their list comes up with a lot of schools near Boston. And then they should try and do it on a night when maybe things aren't going so well at home, and they want to be in California or Canada. And then they're going to cross-reference those two lists, and that will help them narrow down their search. So it's just a fun way to narrow things down. And as we're getting to the end, I'm going to keep it brief and move on to Jim Medeiros.
Thanks, Sue. Hello? I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my picture's not there. That's all. Hi, how are you? I'm Jim Medeiros, and I am a counselor in Cutler House. So good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce the next two slides. So at Newton South, we take a team approach to supporting our students in planning for life after graduation from high school. And the team includes the student primarily, the parent caregiver, and the counselor. Next slide, please. Students take the primary role as they plan for the future. Students lead the process and set the pace. The process is very individual, and it is not one size fits all. When a student envisions their future, it can be very different from every other student around them. So it's just important to remember that we should not set a student's pace or goals or expectations based on any of their peers. It is very individual and personal. In the process, students have various responsibilities, including scheduling meetings with their counselors, actively engaging in researching colleges, and using a variety of resources available to them, such as the college search feature in Naviance, which Kathy Sabet just introduced. Also attending college fairs. Most are virtual right now. Scheduling college tours if available, and visiting with college representatives that schedule meetings at Newton South, either virtual. They have been virtual. I'm not sure if they will be in person in the future, but either way, students should be aware of those meetings and scheduling those visits with college reps. Students also need to continue doing their best academic work. It's very important to just maintain good grades, staying academically sound throughout the rest of their junior year. It's also important for students to communicate and seek assistance from us. We are here to support and guide them throughout the process. The other responsibility they have is to complete the student information sheet. And that was discussed earlier in the evening. Some counselors ask students to fill this form out in June, and others will ask them to fill it out in September. But either way, this information really helps us as counselors to craft a supportive statement that is sent to college as part of the college application. And last but not least, students must remember to send their test scores to colleges if they are required. Now, as parents and guardians, the primary role is to offer perspective and support without judgment. At times when this is difficult or challenging, please reach out to your student's counselor or speak with our college counselor, Kathy Sabet. We are here to assist you, to clarify, and to coach you through this process. Parents also provide insights on the options and limitations on other factors that come up, such as distance and cost. Parents also function as an administrative assistant of sorts, helping your student to stay organized and to be aware of those application deadlines. Parents also communicate openly in a way that works for you and your student. And again, if you're hitting a roadblock or feeling confused, just share any concerns or questions with your student's counselor. Parents also complete the financial aid applications, and you can do this as early as the fall. And finally, we ask parents to complete and submit a parent information sheet to the counselor. This is sort of a brag sheet that provides us with your perspective, and it also helps us to formulate the statement that we write for your student. Now, as counselors, our responsibility and our role, we inform and advise students throughout the entire process. We give students a timeline to guide them. We help them to develop a balanced list that includes colleges in their target range, as well as those that are considered reach schools. We also coach students to use the tools and resources that are available to them as they research their many options, whether it be college or gap year or military or any other pathway that is appropriate for them. As counselors, we can also help them to just review their essay on the Common Application. This is something that we can do along with Ms. Sabet, our college counselor. And lastly, as counselors, we play a role in helping students to navigate the financial aid process, as well as researching scholarship options. Together as students, parents, and counselors, we take a team approach that we think will help you and your student navigate this process of preparing for a life after high school. We are here to answer questions, address concerns, and guide our students in making informed decisions about their future. Thank you very much. And I'm just going to pass it along to my colleague, Ari Kenyon, who will talk about junior timeline.
Thanks, Jim. Hi, everyone. I'm Ari Kenyon. I am a counselor in Cutler House and Goodwin House. And I'm going to be talking about the junior year timeline. This college planning process requires a lot of patience and persistence, but also a lot of planning and preparation. The process and timeline is going to look slightly different for each student, but tonight we really just want to give a general overview of things we want students and families to be thinking about and doing over the next couple of months. So thinking about January and February, the next big event for our juniors is the seminar, which some will be happening tomorrow during WIN block, but most of those seminars will be happening next week during WIN blocks. And during these seminars, students will be meeting in small groups with their counselor, who will share a lot of the same information you're hearing tonight. So it'll be a great opportunity for you and your student to review this information together at a later date. And following these seminars, we encourage students to schedule individual meetings with their counselors to go over 3 important things. One, start to discuss senior course registration, which Ms. Choi discussed. And I will reiterate, we're encouraging students to have a balanced course load, keeping in mind that applying for college can be an extra class kind of in and of itself. And we encourage students to think about whether or not they might want to challenge themselves by taking an honors or AP level course in a subject area that interests them and that they're passionate about. During this meeting, students will also have a chance to talk with their counselor about what is their personal criteria that is guiding their process and their search process. What are the things that they're looking for in college, that they want to experience there, and opportunities that they want to have available to them. And lastly, during this meeting, we will also discuss summer plans. We encourage students to be doing something over the summer, whether it's a job or a part-time internship, academic enrichment program. Doesn't really matter what it is, but as we want students to be doing something that's meaningful and helping them, explore more what they might want to do in college or delve deeper into a passion. And over the next 2 months, we encourage students to also engage in some independent work. So this includes exploring Naviance, researching schools, registering for standardized tests, and continuing to maintain focus on their current coursework. And with Naviance, if students need login information, just have them reach out to their counselor and they're more than happy to help them with that. Next slide, please. So looking ahead to March and April, again, in March, we're going to be encouraging students to engage in that independent work, such as researching, applying for summer programs, creating a resume, registering for standardized tests. And, as they're doing their research, we encourage students to be taking note of colleges that they're interested in and really looking to see if those colleges align with the personal criteria that they have. During this time too, there'll be more meetings with your student's counselor, and the focus of these meetings will be on starting to develop that college list. And we encourage students to develop a balanced list, meaning that they're going to have some safety schools, some target schools, and some reach schools. And we really want students to be including you in this process as well. So during these meetings in April, if you would like to be a part of them, definitely reach out to your student's counselor. You're also an important part of this decision-making process and planning process. And now I'm going to pass it off to Ms. Shira Limmer.
Hi, everyone. I am Shira Limmer. I'm the new guidance counselor at Wheeler House. So if your students had Amani previously, they have me now. And I will go through May and June. So we'll be coming up with the deadlines to register for the June SAT or ACT. And again, to reiterate that the students really should be asking 2 of their junior year teachers for their college recommendation letters. I did see a few questions in the Q&A about whether a sophomore year teacher would be appropriate, but colleges do like to see a teacher who the student had more recently. So we do recommend that it is a junior year teacher. And then continue seeking and applying for summer jobs, programs, and internships. So as a parent, over the next 5 months, making sure that you can support your child by checking in about any summer plans, registration deadlines, and things like that would be a great opportunity for parents and caregivers as well. Making sure that they're not missing any of those SAT or ACT deadlines is important. And do go ahead, as everyone has said, with schedule a family meeting to review the preliminary college list, et cetera. Reach out to us with questions. And Kathy is a huge support as well. So I know even if we aren't sure, we can reach out to her as well and make sure that we can help you the best way possible. And completing that parent and caregiver information sheet is hugely beneficial. So if your counselor gives it to you, gives it to your child, or if you ask for it by then, please do make sure you fill that out. Otherwise, that would be something that would be done in the fall. Next slide. And again, so what's coming up? We have the course registration for their senior year classes, late March and early April 2022, reiterating what everyone else says, a balanced course load, making sure they have some time to adhere to all of these other responsibilities in this process. SAT and ACT testing is in the documents, in the resources portion of the College and Career website, which is incredibly comprehensive. So do check that out. And they'll also have the virtual National Association for College Admission Counseling fairs with those dates already listed for you to refer to. And then the college representative visits in the spring. They will be posted on Naviance and again on the College and Career Center website.
So that brings us to the close of our presentation, and certainly we have an opportunity now to answer any questions that might remain. I know a number of questions have been answered in the Q&A dialogue throughout the presentation or have been answered in real time. But at this point, just as we come to a close, really just want to come back to the idea that this is a developmental process, and your children, as they define their own paths, this is an exciting time for them. It's also a time that can be fraught with uncertainty, and we are here to partner with you to support your children through this process, to answer the questions that you might have, and really to be the expert sounding board for you and for your children. It is really, really important that we maintain a focus on, overall in this process, your kids are going through a really exciting time. This is a moment of exploration. It's a moment of self-discovery, and to really focus on that through the process. We talk sometimes, and Pat Gonzalez, our athletic director, and I have had great discussions around results-oriented goals versus process-oriented goals. You may have some results-focused goals in your mind. You may have a clear vision in your mind's eye, or your child may already, of some places that they would be really happy to end up, some destinations. You may not have a clear picture of where your child is going to end up, but focusing on the process, being in the moment, and using this as an opportunity to really see your relationship with your children mature and grow as they become more independent. I can assure you it will give you the confidence that you're looking for, that as your kids prepare to launch into life beyond high school, you'll know that they're ready for it because they will have owned this process. We thank you. We're so excited to be working with you. And at this point, as I said, there are a number of questions remaining in the chat box. We can certainly address some of those. And please, if there are additional questions you have, you can keep those coming. We'll stay on for just a little while longer as we answer as many of these questions as we can. So thank you. I'm going to conclude the presentation portion here, and just if I can ask any of the counselors to sort of help out and be a bit of a facilitator, maybe reading out some of the questions that might remain in the Q&A and as they come in, and we can all sort of take turns fielding some of those questions.
So I'll go ahead and start. One person is asking, is there a summer SAT or ACT? Their son has a spring sport and AP test, so adding an SAT or ACT would just be overwhelming. Absolutely correct. Yeah, so a couple years ago, both SAT and ACT decided the same thing, probably more so because it would help their bottom line, but they do offer summer testing. So there is there's a June SAT and a June ACT, and then please, if I'm wrong, just I may be a little confused, but there's a July ACT and a August SAT.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, there's plenty of opportunities, not plenty, but there's more opportunities for when there's less accountability for for doing courses and extracurriculars. If you can make it work in the summer, that could be a really nice time to test with limited stress. I would say that if you're wanting summer, register for those spots as early as possible. Newton South, we do SAT testing. Newton North does ACT testing. We do not do summer testing. So just know that you'd probably have to find something that was in the area. And because not all high schools test in summers like Newton, the spaces might be limited. So as soon as you can register, you'd want to get on College Board and ACT and check that out.
I'm seeing a question here. It says, does Naviance provide reach, target, or safety designation to schools based on SAT and GPA input? So Naviance does not do that automatically, but that's part of the conversation that will often have students as we sit down and we look at sort of learning how to decode those scattergrams. They are a very crude data point, I will tell you. So they take into account standardized test scores if available. And as has been noted, the last couple of years, standardized testing was first significantly disrupted by COVID. And then in response to that, a vast number of schools moved to test optional policies. So that has had an impact on the comprehensiveness of the scattergrams in Naviance. The more students that have applied without test scores, the more data points that exist but are not plotted on those scattergrams because the student might not have had test scores in the system. But counselors are happy to work with students and really kind of understand how they can use those two data points as part of a more comprehensive understanding of what schools might be that sort of realistic reach, target, where do they fall on that continuum? This is a great one, and I'd love if anyone else wants to chime in. Are there any suggestions for students who aren't really sure if they want to go to college or not? And maybe, they're sort of waffling, changing their mind back and forth. What does anyone want to sort of weigh in on how that conversation will go when you're working with a student who's questioning whether direct entry to college is the right choice for them?
We actually see this quite a bit. I am Aaron Lewis in Wheeler House. This is a long process, and kids kind of, as many kids do, they change their mind a lot. And we're here to kind of support the kids through those mind changes. And, it's kind of like a developmental, major developmental piece. So, I'm dealing with current seniors now that are unsure, and it's perfectly fine, and everybody's in a different place. And sometimes we'll suggest gap years, or and one question I saw earlier was, we do recommend that kids apply to colleges even if they're thinking about a gap year, just so they don't have to come back to school after they've left. It's a lot easier to go through the process with us while they're in school. But this is we do help many kids across the spectrum figure out what they want to do. And like we said earlier, most of them do go to four-year colleges, but more and more kids are taking gap years now, and we're very open, and there's some great gap year programs.
I'll just add a little bit that I actually love working with students who are just wanting to see what their options are. So Shira and I actually had a student today, and it was just, I thought it was awesome, Shira. So just wanting to kind of know, like, what else is there available? And so just kind of sharing the different routes for the next step. So we were discussing how we're not making plans for forever. We're making plans for, what you feel is going to be the next best thing for you to transition out of high school, to pursue your curiosities. So, and for some students that may be college, for other students, it could be college down the road, or it may not be college at all. So I think going back to what Dan said in the beginning is just, having that conversation about, like, if you're thinking it's college, well, why? Like, what do you hope to get from this? What makes you excited about your choice to go to college? And then realize there are a lot of other types of programs that are out there where, they could even be doing, well, they could call it a gap year, but they could be getting some kind of a skill in the course of a year after high school, take that skill with them. For example, a couple of years ago, we had a dental hygienist program or a dental assistant program. They would get certified to be a dental assistant, like, sterilizing equipment and so on. And then they could take that off to college with them and then be making, like, really good money doing that. So there's a lot of really creative ways to look at, like, kind of what's going to make that student happy or fulfill them. That's still obtaining some kind of training, getting some kind of a certificate, to have to produce a skill, a certificate or proof of some kind of credential. So it is fun to work with students, even in the beginning, if it is college, just having those conversations with them.
Great. I'm seeing another question here. It says, there are some schools that open their applications up early, as early as August 1st. If a student wanted to submit a rolling admission application as early as the summer before the school year starts, how can they go about having transcripts or recommendations in for early August? It's a question that comes up every year. We typically do not start releasing students' transcripts until after our senior parent night, which is about the third week in September. Part of the reason for that is we have our senior seminar, we have students review their transcripts to make sure that everything is correct on their transcripts. We also are still in the process of developing our school profile for the current school year at that point. If you have a situation that requires sort of special consideration, occasionally this might come up with athletic recruiting, please reach out to your child's counselor. If it is over the summer, you can reach out to me, but again, typically we are not yet prepared to send those transcripts out. And that's something most colleges and universities really do understand, that high schools all over the country have different opening days. Down in the South and some other areas, by August 1st, high schools are open and the school year has started. But most colleges are aware that in our part of the country, school doesn't start until just before or just after Labor Day. And they're very understanding of that. we will do our best to work with you in certain circumstances, but it may not always be possible to get those transcripts out over the summer before the school year starts. Do you have suggestions about when to do campus visits to learn about what different settings feel like? Though there is some awareness that this is tricky during COVID times. Does anyone want to take a response at that?
Well, I mean, I can say a few things. I would say, really, whenever your child is ready to engage in that, I think early exposure sometimes for some students helps. I think sometimes it helps them really want to engage in high school, because they see like there's a means to an end. So if your child is possibly needing to kind of see that this is what the options are afterwards. Like I think early, junior year now is starting now would be fine. Some students, they're not ready to do it until senior year, or they want to start out slow and maybe do, just the college rep visits when they come to the high school. I don't know if anybody else has anything else.
I've also had over the years a number of families who have done the virtual tours online for colleges and then waited until the acceptances come in to actually do the visits of the schools. And I think that's a little more popular right now with COVID, where people are afraid to travel, especially long distances.
There's a question here asking if students are not receiving a cumulative GPA, what GPA do they input when using Naviance? I will tell you that's one of the more complicated questions that we've been wrestling with some of the GPA changes that were made at both high schools. Without a cumulative GPA, it does complicate things. We will encourage students to, as they look at scattergrams based on each of the year over year unweighted GPAs that are calculated, to approximate where that overall GPA is. We recognize that it is a challenge. We are sort of dealing with that and the implications of it, obviously, every day. There were, unfortunately, when the GPA, well, not GPA, rather, the grading decisions around last year that I think there was a lot of dissatisfaction from a lot of parties around last year's grading scale. It speaks volumes that we're using a different scale again this year, but it really complicated things because having two different grading scales in different years, we can't do a cumulative GPA those two different scales because we would be sort of combining apples and oranges. And as a result, we expect that we will not be able to continue to or resume calculating a cumulative GPA until after all of the cohorts of students who were in high school during the 2021 school year when we used our modified grading scale have graduated. It's frustrating, we understand, but it just kind of is one of the unfortunate consequences of the responses to all of these changes with the pandemic. So I know that may not be a satisfactory answer, but that is the best answer that we can give around that. Seeing a question here. I know some high schools have good or bad relationships with certain colleges that give kids an edge when they are coming from that school. Are there any schools that Newton South has a particularly strong track record placing students? Kathy, I'm wondering if you have a response. Embedded in that question, I'm sure there are like some anecdotal stories, perhaps. Over the course of my career, my relationships with admissions officers and having conversations with them, I know that sort of perception does exist, that there are kind of sort of special relationships. Truthfully, I don't believe that to be sort of the reality for specifically public high schools. It may be the case that there are historic, sort of traditions of, relationships between certain independent schools, private schools, and colleges. My experience, and Kathy, again, I'm going to have you sort of give your 2 cents on this, is that is sort of no longer part of the experience, that the colleges are seeking how can they bring in the most representative, broad, diverse in every which way class that they can, and that generally doesn't serve them well to sort of treat themselves as having like a pipeline from a particular school. But Kathy, please chime in, and sort of you've got your finger on the pulse of this very, very closely as well.
Yeah, I don't think, I wouldn't be comfortable saying that, it's a guarantee that this particular school likes us more than any other school. I mean, the thing about college admissions that is a guarantee is that things change like very quickly. So how appealing a particular candidate might be one year from Newton South might completely be different the following year, depending on what an institution's goals are. So, we do our best to kind of look at historical trends, to kind of, predict like those schools, where they're falling for a student, whether it's, as we talked about, a target or reach school. And there's some admissions reps that we've had for a long time that know us, that know the school very well, and we enjoy a very nice relationship. But it really does come down to the individual read of the student and what that particular how that particular student's academic readiness and community contributions, and what their educational professional goals are, how they match with the school. So, I mean, that's the best I can do, I guess.
Thank you, Kathy. I appreciate that. And as I'm looking at the clock, I realize we are just about out of time here. I think we got through just about every question that was submitted, thankfully. Really appreciate everyone's attendance here tonight. Again, this is recorded and we will be posting the recording in the coming days. If you have any conversations with your peers and hear from anyone, I missed junior night, what was discussed, please let them know. It will be posted on the website, and we'll also send out that link. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your evening. And big thank you to the counseling staff for your roles this evening.